Hey gamers, in this episode, we're going to talk about metagaming and how it can hurt your role-playing experience. Hey gamers, welcome back to Game Master's Dungeon. I'm Brian, your Game Master. And today's topic, for us players, we're going to talk about metagaming. Or you could look at it as player knowledge versus character knowledge, and how using this in certain situations will hurt your role-playing experience. But before we get into that, hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Also, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and that bell icon so you get instant notifications when I upload new videos. It also helps support the channel. Also, join me over on Discord so we can all get together and we can talk about different topics there, live as well. And also follow me on Twitter. So when I upload new stuff, I can post there. And then also, if you have maybe content ideas or something you would like to see, either put it in the comments below or put it over on Twitter. So with that said, let's get into it. Alright gamers, so we're going to talk about the metagaming and why is it important. First, as a disclaimer, obviously this is my opinions. My years of my experience and the people I've played with and doing it myself, I've just found that certain times when this is used, it could just really hurt your role-playing experience if you're looking for that deep immersion and that suspension of disbelief. This topic will kind of help deter that. If that doesn't concern you, then feel free to, go on to a different video, check out some of my other content. But if you're interested in a deeper, more enriched role-playing experience, stay with me. So what do I mean by metagaming? So metagaming in this sense that I'm talking about is player knowledge versus character knowledge. Okay, so you're like, what does that mean? Isn't it one and the same? Not really. Remember that when you play a role-playing game, you're creating a character that you're going to play as. You're going to take on this persona. So they know different things. They have different attitudes, different thoughts. It's a totally different universe. You're a totally different person. And sometimes it's hard to differentiate you, the player, versus you, the character. Think of it like acting. If any of you ever acted, in high school or whatever, you're playing another character, right? You have to be that character, know what that character knows. But stuff that you would know outside of the context, you need to kind of set aside or forget. Let's talk about examples. Maybe this will help. So we're going to go to Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons is a fantastic example because most players have played several games. If not, if this is your first game, you've probably at least looked through the player's handbook. You looked at the different classes, different equipment, spells, magic items, that kind of stuff. So you have some knowledge of a general sense of things in the game. But when you create your character, say you're going to create a fighter, right? You might know a lot about the different spells and magical equipment and rituals, but your character doesn't. He wouldn't know. That's not his training. Like, fighters are not trained that way. When you first build the character, it's made because of the training that it gets. Wizards are trained in the arcane stuff, so they know that. Fighters don't. So, say you're playing this fighter and you come across a spellcaster NPC, an enemy, an evil wizard or something, right? Well, you see him chanting a spell or performing a ritual, and you, the player, might know, oh, he's casting fireball, or he's summoning monsters or something, because if the DM or GM describes what the guy is doing, you can probably put two and two together. But now, would your character know? Of course not. No. If this is the first time he's ever encountered something like that, he would have no idea what's going on. All he would know is that wizard is using some kind of arcane ability, and it's probably not going to be good for him. It's for nefarious purposes. So now it's, say, your turn to act. Like, okay, fighter, it's your turn. Well, what do? Would you use the knowledge that you as the player have of spells? Like, I should get into melee and use this ability to interrupt him or to make it harder for him to cast. Well, yeah, you could, but very specifically on like how to counter certain things. If your character would know these things, you shouldn't do them. You're like, well, I would want to play. I want to, you as the player want to play the game. Some people will say correctly, or to counter. Right? This isn't a video game where you've got your character and I'm going to pick my character to counter that because I know everything about all the characters or whatever. This is something you have to make decisions as the character. If it ends badly, it ends badly. But if you make the good decision as the character, you play like you don't know what's going on and you would do what the character would normally do, and it goes bad, sure, it might, you might end up your character dying, or it might not be the best outcome, but it's a more enriching experience because, like your character would learn about that stuff. You're like, okay, so now if I see another wizard and he's doing this, whatever the guy was doing, you know what he's going to be doing, right? You can take notes for your character. Oh, I've seen an evil wizard. I've seen him cast fireball. I've seen him cast summoning rituals. So then when you come across it again, then your character would know and to act accordingly. Another example, we're going to stay in Dungeons and Dragons. Let's talk about, the party, you're going through a cave or whatever, and you meet a monster. A monster your characters haven't ever met before. Never seen one, never dealt with one, never heard about one. Well, they describe it, they're like, oh, it's a rust monster or something. You're like, oh, I've looked through the monster manual. I know it's a rust monster. I know that it's weak against this. I know that it's strong against this. And I know about what abilities it can use. Well, does your character know? Right? No, your character doesn't know. So you might first want to take your player knowledge, put it into the character, and be like, okay, he's going to do this, and he's going to do that, and we need to do this. Well, if the party as a whole has never seen this monster before, you should act as though you haven't. Do what you normally would and learn on the fly. Sure, it could end poorly. The characters could die. You might not beat the encounter, whatever, but it will lead to a more enriching experience because it also helps your character to grow. They learn new things. And I think for me, like I said, this is all based on, kind of really how I like to enjoy my role-playing games. Like I said, some of you may, want a different experience, and that's okay. But those of you that want the enriching experience, the suspension of disbelief, these are the kind of things you've got to think about. Also, another thing would be like, so say a lot of the rules of the game, and say the GM is, they're making a scenario and maybe they change one of the rules or break one of the rules for the purposes of driving a story. This is not be your time as the player to argue and be like, well, actually the rule says this. Play your character. You're not the player in the game, you are playing a character in the game. The character doesn't know that any rules are being broken or not used or bent or things like that. Just remember, play the character with the character's knowledge, and then as your group that you've got with you, say you've got, different classes with different specializations, you can learn as characters from each other. And then next time you come across certain things, you're better prepared. All right, gamers. So that was just a brief video, an introduction to metagaming and why it's not good for you if you're looking for the suspension of disbelief and the deep role-playing experience. Basically, just remember, separate player knowledge from character knowledge. It will be hard. Trust me. You're going to catch yourself doing it all the time. You're like, oh, well, actually, I know about this. Just be like, wait. Think about what your character knows, what your character can do, and only do what that character is. Because remember, the character is a different person, a different personality, different quirks, attitude, all that stuff. You've got to learn to play that in the game. And if you do, trust me, you will have a better role-playing experience. Thanks for watching. Until I see you again in the dungeon, I'm Brian, your Game Master, and happy gaming.